but it can equally be very lonely and isolating. And I think what I found has made that much easier. Yeah, I don't feel alone. I don't, because I can go. There's various directions I can go in.
So we've got Kev Lynes with us today. Kev, how are you doing?
Hello, how are you, Josh? You're right.
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, how are you?
Yeah, not bad. Had a long day. Very tired, but been looking forward to doing this.
It's going to be fun. So, Kev, you're a PDI at the minute. Would you like to tell us a little bit about what you're up to and how you found kind of the job so far while you're working on your PDI license?
Yeah, it's been a nice uh, journey so far. Found it a lot easier. I've done this before. Started first became a PDI back in, I can't even remember when it was now. I think we spoke about this before. It
Yes.
was 2000 and something, but it was before it was PST days, and I had a really bad experience with the school that was sponsoring me. Um, and I just got really disillusioned with it and come away from it. I thought I'm never going to do that again. I don't want to get involved in that experience again. And then fast forward to, I suppose it was just after COVID, really, that I just started getting fed up with my job at the time, wanted to try something different. And then, because I'm one of the world's best procrastinators, it took me about 18 months to actually do something about it, which was back in May of this year. Already had a conversation 18 months previous with the school that sponsor me, and kind of left it. Oh, I'll be back in touch. And then 18 months later, I got back in touch. And it was funny because he picked the phone up and it was carrying on like it was yesterday. He said, "Oh, you've decided now. Okay, right, let's move this forward." Which was great. And it was a really good experience, really good people. Um, got time for you, really down to earth. And that set me up then to this is different this time. This is not the same feeling as it was before. So I did my part one, did my part two, and we'll probably touch on this a little bit later. As but part one and part two always seems to be the two bits you kind of just go and do yourself, or you get minimal kind of training or input for part two and part one if you're lucky. Because I've done it before, I felt good. I felt prepared. I felt that I had what I needed to. Yeah, I was worried about part two, coming up to part two, worried about, oh, am I going to pass? I've only got 6 driver faults to play with and all that. Turned out that I only needed one, because I only got one. And I knew what I got one for as soon as I'd done it. It was a really weak emergency stop. So apart from that, it would have been a clean sheet. Um, and then my 40 hours actually consisted of a really nice balance from different people. So it was
Okay.
it was part of it was from my sponsor school, which they've got an audit trainer. Some of it was from the Go Green online training, which I can talk about a little bit later. And yeah, and that mixture of different voices, different opinions, different ideas, I was able to pick out the bits that made sense to me, the bits that I wasn't sure about, then I could approach them and get more information about that. And it just seemed a really nice, easy process. So I'm now on my pink. I've been on my pink for 4 or 5 weeks now, and finding it equally frustrating and enjoyable all at the same time. And that's where I am now.
So you've mentioned that you've done the process previously, and this is second time because you decided to not pursue it first time round, didn't have a great experience. This time round, did you do more research? Did you kind of just go with the first school you came across? What was the deciding factor to kind of give it another go and stick with it and get to the stage that you have now?
There were two reasons, really. The first one was when I was doing it before, it was very much you kind of pluck out a school out of the yellow pages because, I mean, Google was about them days, but it wasn't the big behemoth it is now. So it was mainly yellow pages, that sort of local newspapers and stuff. And I just picked it because they'd had a decent reputation and they were a fairly large local school. And I thought, what could go wrong? You know? And then I realised that things can go wrong. And it went wrong quite drastically. And it would be very easy for me to say that it was all their fault and I had no part in it. But that's exactly how I feel. You know, I tried and just had so many issues, so many problems, that, I mean, it ended up in a county court judgment. That's how bad it got. So I was quite, it really affected me. It made me feel very, very disillusioned, very, very frustrated and angry. And that's why it probably took so long for me to come back round to it. But this time around, it was having that chat with my sponsor in school. That was the first deciding factor, because he was very down to earth, very genuine. He came across as very genuine. And I think the fact of what had happened before was the reason for that 18-month period of procrastination. And in that 18-month period, I'd done some more research. You know, you go online, you find things out and read. I'm quite good at reading in between the lines. So, you know, I would click on, you know, the big school links, but also I'd scroll down to the third or fourth page and find not so many known or completely unknown names. And I just did a lot of research, read into it, found out that the actual qualifying process, the exams had all changed. You know, like part 3 wasn't what it used to be. It was completely different now. And there was all this coaching, client-centered stuff. And it was like, what's going on? I thought I just got in a car and taught someone how to drive and that was it. And it actually appealed to me. It's like, this is more of a profession than what I kind of imagined it was going to be before. So it was like, yeah, I'm going to get involved in this. You know, the fact that my employment leading up to that was, I mean, it was okay. You know, I got up and I went to work and I didn't dislike my job, but I wasn't over the moon about it, wasn't happy about it. And I was like, look, getting on a bit, Kev. You know, you've got to enjoy what you do. You've got to find some sort of satisfaction. And I came back to this again, to driving instruction. So that's when I phoned the sponsor again. Oh, hello again. 18 months later, like it was yesterday. And yeah, it went from there. It was a lot of chats, went for a chat, talked. But I felt I was much more prepared for what was to come this time, because the information, I think it'd be fair to say that there was more information available. There's more information out there. There's this very small, unknown podcast guy called Terry. Don't know if you've heard of him.
I've heard rumors.
Yeah. There's not that many people heard of him, really. But anyway, it was quite good. You know, I listened to it. I thought this will be good. I'll have a listen, see what this guy's got to say. And it was actually, that was another factor in me pushing forward. You know, it was, yeah, I like where this is. I like what I'm hearing. I like these people. These people that are on this guy's podcast are making sense. It all makes sense. They seem really nice people, really down to earth. A complete stark difference to what I'd experienced before, you know. So it was like I knew I was on the right path. I thought, right, yeah, this feels good this time. This actually feels different. It feels much better. So yeah, there was much more research, but there was also there's more information out there than I'd expected. To be honest with you, it's quite a lot of information out there, but it's not easy to find, which is strange because it should be. You just type it into Google, but I found that it's not. You need to delve in a little bit further. You know, you need to read between the lines. You need to. It's like a little bit like a rabbit warren, I suppose. You know, the further you go down, the more you find out. But you might get lost. So be careful.
It is great that there's so much information out there. And yeah, I appreciate what you say. It's not as easy to find as you might hope. I done what I expect you did first time round. I clicked on the first few Google ads. I want to be a driving instructor. Let's see who's doing what. And it was the big schools at the top. And I've said on most episodes at the minute, I just went for the cheapest one. And it probably wasn't the best thing, as we was discussing earlier. The hindsight is great. If I could go back and change it, I probably would, but I can't. And here we are now. So with the research, we've got Terry's podcast. It's a real podcast. And for anyone who's listening and wants to head over there, the Instructor Podcast, so much content on there from him. Did you find, I know you've mentioned that put you in a good position to do it. Can you remember anything in particular that you direct people to if they're at the early kind of research stages so that they can have a look and see if this job's for them?
Yeah, the one thing I did, and I've alluded to this before about reading between the lines, is I too clicked on the first couple of links on Google and ended up at a couple of the big schools. But what I did was the first place I went was the terms and conditions. And I did what everybody else doesn't do. And I went and read them. And there was quite a lot of red flags for me in the terms and conditions. Why is that worded that way? Or why are they mentioning that? You know, and I thought, I'm not sure about this. I'm not sure I'm willing to sign up to this. Because at that point, even up to now, there's still a lot of uncertainty until you get that green badge. And even after the green badge, we've still got standards checks. So it is kind of, there's a certain amount of uncertainty involved in it. But I wasn't willing to take that much of a dive into something that was costing me I considered it to be quite a large amount of money. Some people it might not be. But I wasn't willing to take that risk based on what I'd read on the terms and conditions. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't suit, that would not suit or suit everyone. I mean, there are people it might suit, and that's great. And they were different. The terms and conditions read differently from different schools. But ultimately, I decided to pass on all of it, and I was very tempted by one. But having read the terms and conditions again, I thought, no, I'm not willing to risk that. And when people read them, you can decide for yourself whether you think that, you're willing to, yeah, I can accept that. Yeah, that's no problem. Or no, I'm not willing to do that right now. So I decided to opt for local school. And that was the 18 months previous, just after COVID, or I say just after, it was after COVID. And they had terms and conditions, but they were quite simplistic. So I questioned them about it. And it was all very much, look, we're interested in you. This is our reputation. We've got a reputation that we want to uphold. And we're not going to do anything to jeopardize that. and we'll give you the support you need to get you through it. And I thought, well, yeah, okay, it's nice. I like what you're saying, but is it actually what I'm going to get? And it was. It was. I'm really pleased with the level of support I've had from them. Their business model, their ethos, it's all good. It's all good stuff. And I'm pleased to be involved with them. I've spoke to a lot of PDIs on groups because I'm a member of Lou's PDI group. I've been a bit quiet this week because I've been self-reflecting and keeping myself to myself a little bit this week, just to give myself a little bit of time, because it can become overwhelming. There's a lot that goes on, and I think now I just need to, just concentrate on me a little bit this week, which is what I've done. And you go on them, and there's some horror stories. Not just that group, there are other groups. There's other people that I've spoken to, and it's like, this has happened. It's like, really? You think that sounds awful. And I just, every time I hear that, I really feel grateful for where I found myself at the moment. Yeah, it's good. It's nice. It's a nice place.
There's so much help out there. That's obviously how we met, through this real podcast that's floating around the industry. And when you say about reading the terms and conditions, I didn't, but I was offered a PDI license. It was going to cost me X amount a week. And I just asked the question, what do I get for that money? And it was like, you get a car, insurance, and students. And I kind of, bear in mind, I knew nothing about the industry. I'm like, I can get a car for cheaper than that. And I'll figure out students. I'll make it work. And I didn't know how I was going to pass my part 3 at this point. I just knew that I wasn't forking out a lot of money every week, when I could do it cheaper myself. And then I started ringing around insurance companies to find out if I could get a car with dual control, so that when I pass my part 3, I've got the car ready to go. And it was at that point I found out that I could go on a non-PDI route and just teach for free, which was a process that I ended up doing and qualified second time. But with you mentioning the terms and conditions, is that something that you find you do naturally anyway? You read into things, you look into stuff, or is it from your past experience that now you're going into it and making sure that with the terms and conditions, you're protected as much as kind of the sponsor's protected?
Yeah, I'm not a terms and conditions person. I don't have the time. I just go, yeah, click, and off you go. But yeah, it was to do with my previous experience. I was just like, I'm going to do everything I can not to repeat what happened again. I'm not going to do it again. And that's, like it took me 18 months from my first contact that I'm going to ring them. I'm going to ring them. And I rang them, and I was like, I like what they're saying. I put the phone down, and it took me 18 months to decide yes, because I was so worried, frightened that I was going to go down that same route again. And I didn't want to go through it. I mean, that whole process before was so, horrific is for me, that's how it felt. I mean, I had a bailiff at my door at one point, and it was like, oh no, I'm not going to go through it again. So yeah, it was 18 months of making sure that what I do is going to be the right thing for me, come hell or high water. And that was why I delved into, like I said earlier, I read one of them twice, because I thought, man, it doesn't sound too bad. But then I went and read it again and went, no, I'm not happy with that. And I didn't question them, because at the end of the day, that's their terms and conditions. I could speak to a human for as long as I needed to, as often as I wanted, but ultimately it didn't really matter what they said. It's what's written in black and white that really makes the difference. and I read it and understood it and wasn't happy, and that was that. And I did consider your route, going down the teaching for free, but I wanted a certain level of support, and I felt that I was going to get it the way I chose to do it. So I've chosen not only to go through a local school that had a good reputation and came across like they cared. That's the thing. They came across like they cared. I didn't know at the time that they did, but they do. And but I wanted the different voices. I didn't want, because before it was just one voice, it was one trainer, and this is how you do it, and this is the way you're going to get through, and you've got to listen to me, and that was it. And that's all I knew. That's what I thought it was. But now this is not. It's not just that. There's I mentioned the Go Green course, which I would recommend to anyone. Set up by Lou and Blaine Walsh and Laura Morris. And obviously, as we know, sadly, Lou's not with us anymore, which is a real shame for the industry, because even now, I owe Lou a lot from what I've learned from when she was with us, and even now when she's not. But that keeps going. We've got the Zooms that are part of the course every 2 weeks, and they're really helpful. And you've got Diana and Phil that are part of that team as well. We had a really good Zoom on Sunday night. Thank you, Diana. Yeah, so I've completely forgotten what the question was in the first place, but I hope I've answered it.
Yeah, so it was around kind of your past experience setting you up and the advice you're kind of giving people that are thinking of becoming a driving instructor is read the terms and conditions and make sure you understand them. And I get it. Some of the stuff that we see of what people are going through who are on a PDI license, and that they're just tied into a contract and they've signed it. And we fall into this habit of, please sign the terms and conditions. Yeah, okay, tick that box, sign this box, and away we go. But some of them can be quite long contracts as well. And it's difficult to get out of them. That's why there's a contract. So I think that's massively important. And I don't really remember anyone on any of the other episodes kind of delving in that much. And one of the deciding factors on where you went was based on the terms and conditions. But I think it's massively important that you need to understand what it is you're signing up to, because you're starting a new career and you're going to be working with these people for quite a long period of time. You want to make sure you're getting the support you need, like you've said, and they're people that you can work with. I'm talking to a few PDIs that are really not getting on with their trainer.
Yeah.
And they've not really got an option with it, because that's your trainer that's in your area. You've got to crack on. Whereas what you've done is you've seeked someone out and you've spoke to them and you like how they do things. See, however long your contract is, whatever you've signed up to, you're probably in a good place and happy to work with them for however long that is, I expect.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the conversation, when I came into it, I had all the intentions of getting my green badge, going independent and making my own destiny, but like I've said to them already, I said, I'll get my green badge and I'll stay as long as I'm happy with what you're doing for me and what you do for your other instructors and what you do for future PDIs. I've got absolutely no need to fix what isn't broken. And you were talking about just earlier on there about being stuck with the same trainer. And it was when you said in your area, I chuckled inside, because some large schools, the area can be very vast. and you might have to travel an hour and a half to meet up with your local trainer. And that is just something that some people don't have the time to do that, and you're possibly paying on top if you're paying as you go. There are so many options out there, but if you're going to sign up for a package and you're happy with the terms and conditions, there's still pitfalls. There'll be a trainer that you're stuck with and you don't get on. And if you don't get on with your trainer, it's going to make training really miserable and you're really not going to enjoy it. And it's not going to be as effective as it should be. And to a certain extent, I've got the same problem in my school. There is one audit trainer, but she's very good. But I'd also done my research on her before I'd gone with the school, because she's not part of the school. She's her own entity and they use her as a, like subcontracting type of thing. So the information was around about her anyway. And what I'd read and what I gleaned from the internet was all good stuff. So I felt prepared to be able to take that dive. I'd done all the research, spoken to them. I'd gone on the internet to find out reviews. I'd gone on their Facebook page. I did all that. I stalked them like relentlessly, because I was so worried, because of what had happened before. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. And I'm not doing that again. But I really wanted to get back into it. I felt it was the right thing for me. And that's where I am. I feel grateful for being in that position, because there are so many people that are in a position where they're begging their trainers to give them an hour session, and it's like, yeah, but you've got to come to me, and they're like 80 miles away, and it's like, it's just ridiculous. So I know the terms and conditions aren't going to cover that, but it's certainly a question that a potential driving instructor could ask is, if I don't get on with my trainer, what are the options? And if the option is, well, that's it, then shop around. See if there's somebody else that would give you that guarantee. If you don't get on with a trainer, we'll find you another trainer. We've got several trainers in your area. Ask where the trainer is, to your location. Mine is all based in where I live. So the furthest I've got to drive to meet my trainer is 20 minutes, which suits me fine.
There's some good questions there, and I think maybe we can spend a little bit of time on that if you're up for it.
Yeah.
Maybe some questions that you should be asking if you're at the stage of you want to be a driving instructor and you've seen the website and you've read the terms and conditions. I think that's a really good question around what happens if I don't get on with my trainer. That's something that's definitely relevant, because you need to know where the next one is, or if you've got a few that are local. So we've got that. Ask what happens if you're not getting on with your trainer. What other questions do you think are worth asking? Let's make a bit for.
And now you're putting me on the spot.
I've got a few that are flying around my head, but I'll get your opinion first.
No, I mean, my one's really about, if you're not sure of the terms and conditions, then it's clarifying points. Clarify points with them. And if you can get the clarification in writing, even better, because you don't know who that person is on the end of the phone. It could be the sponsor themselves, it could be the audit trainer, or it could be just someone that's there answering the phone to take calls, or a salesperson, and their job is to get you to sign up, and they might tell you what you want to hear to get you to sign up. So yeah, clarify any points in the terms and conditions and get them to put that in writing, even if it's just an email to clarify points, because you're not going to be able to use, oh, so and so said this, 3, 4, 5 months down the line. Whereas if you've got an email, at least you've got that paper trail. You've got that, well, I did ask that question and here's the answer I got. Um, yeah, I mean they're the sort of things I would clarify. Like another question I would ask is, what happens if I don't qualify? I'm signing up to this contract, and I've read in here 3 years. But what happens if I don't qualify? Because I've heard, now I don't know how true it is, whether there's weight to it or not, but I've heard PDIs saying that if they fail their third attempt, they've got to pay off the contract that they originally signed up to, which I don't know how long it is. It could be 2 years, 3 years. And I'm thinking, I would be asking that question. Now, my contract, I've got to sign up for 12 months after I pass. And then after that, I've got to give them 28 days notice. But if I fail, I don't have any further commitments, which I think is very useful to know that beforehand. Because you could, yeah, 3 years, no problem. You got to think, you signed up to this dream, yeah, we'll get you through this. You'll be a driving instructor within 9 months, 12 months, whatever. Oh, great, brilliant, love it. And then you fail the third part 3. And I don't think I'm a particularly negative person in this instance, but I'm a realist. I'm realistic. There is a testing regime, and some people don't get through it. I mean, you've only got to look at the percentage, the pass rate. Doesn't make good reading. But then that's another conversation for another day as to the reason why it's as low as it is. But if you're signing up to a contract that is I don't know, 1, 2, 3 year contract, and you're not able to get through that testing process, it's what happens at the end there. That's a question that I would ask. What happens if I don't qualify? Because I doubt very many people actually ask that question, because it's too early to be that negative.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go on. What's some of yours then? You've got some.
So mine, I think, ask to talk to the person that's going to be training you. Because I know with some companies, me, for example, I'd paid. I think I had to pay once I'd registered to become a driving instructor. I think I paid a large sum of money for all 3 parts up front, and talking to the trainer for part 2 and part 3. It'd have been good to know who I was going to be working with. And you can find out at that stage, before you've even paid for something, see if you can speak to the trainer that you're going to be working with, especially if it's a bigger school, because you might be able to get a bit of a judge there if it's someone you'd like to work with or not. And if they've not got time to have a chat with you, what happens when you're struggling? Are they going to have a time to have a chat with you then?
Yeah.
So that would be one. Try and talk to the person that's going to be training you. And that's from my experience and hindsight. And yeah, where are they located? Am I going to have to travel to them? Are they going to come to me? That would be certainly another one, the location and the travel time, because that's going to be a factor.
I would definitely say define local.
Yeah.
Define local, because the term local, we've got a local trainer to you. Yeah, definitely. But what they don't say is we've only got 3 trainers, and they're all like 120 miles from where you live. But that's your local trainer, the one that's most local to you. So it's define local. What does local mean?
And then another one that I think is quite important is, if you do fail, back on this negativity, how much support are you going to get, and how much is that support going to cost you? Because it can be expensive, and I don't know about all packages, but I'm going to go off again my experience. I had the minimum 40 hours intensive. That was it. Fortunately, I didn't need any more training, or I didn't take any more, whichever way we're going to look at it. But I don't know how much it would have cost to have additional training had I failed a part three and required it for the PDI license. So how easy is it to get the additional support, the extra training, and how much is it going to cost? Would be something that, for me, if I was to do it again, I'd want to know that information to potentially budget for it, because the last thing you want to do is fail a part three, have the minimum 5 hours, but it not be enough. And you've now got to try and find time to train, which means you can't deliver lessons, and potentially money to pay for the training when you're not working. So I think that as well, what support are you going to get if you feel the 40 hours wasn't enough, plus the 20 additional training, however that's done? And then if you do fail, what support do you get there?
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that just sparked my interest in what you were saying was a lot of you had the pink is there to learn, not to earn. And I think a lot of PDIs, without intentionally, they quit a job and they go into the pink license on, they sit and work out, oh, if I do this many lessons a week, I can earn this amount of money. And I'll be the first to say I've done that. I didn't do it initially. When I first started on pink, I was part-time. But I felt like I needed to throw myself into it. But I've not done it because of the money I'm making. I feel like I need to throw myself into it to give me the best chance of being able to pass part three. And if I need to give any time to develop myself, then that comes before the lessons. So, there may be times when I have to miss a lesson, cancel a lesson to get my training in that I need. But the way I've done it is I've left a whole day a week free. So I've got time to do, and not just training, it could be personal stuff. I might need it to run errands, take the car to the garage, doctor's appointments, all that sort of stuff. But I've got that day free. So if I need the support that they're going to give me, then it's not like, oh, I've got a full diary, I haven't got enough time. Because you hear that, PDIs can get too reliant on the income. And because they've got to pay these franchise fees and the car and this, that, and the other, they're then, chasing their tail. They need to earn the money to pay the bills, but they need the time to do the training. So that's something I would, not necessarily a question you need to ask a potential sponsor or training school. Something you need to say to yourself, am I able to do that? This is what I should be doing. And you need to set yourself time. But know that from the onset. You shouldn't really wait until you're applying for your pink license before you make that decision. So I spent many weeks leading up to and past getting the pink, making the decision about what hours I was going to do and where I was going to fit training in. So I'd already planned it. I'd already made time pre-pink license that's what I was going to do moving forward. And that's become very useful because I don't feel rushed or, rushed off my feet. I plan, my lessons are planned, so I've got time in between each lesson. Thank you, Terry Cook, because he was the one that gave me the advice indirectly. And that's what I do now. So I leave myself an hour or an hour and a half between lessons. So I've got time to, review and reflect that lesson, make any notes, time for looking after myself. So you got comfort breaks and food, stuff like that, because it's very easy just to book back to back to back to back. And then the end of the day, you've done no self-reflection, you're completely knackered. And all you want to do is go home, crack open a beer or a bottle of wine, put your feet up and relax, and then do it all again tomorrow. So, I think it's important you plan that. So if you're going to go on pink, plan what you're going to do when you're on pink. and make sure you give yourself the time that you need to get all this stuff done. And that's I think that's a really useful piece of advice to somebody that's going down that route and thinking about going the pink route, which I think is, I get the impression that that's the more common route these days, because I was aware before that you could do it alone without a pink license, and it was very much a hot topic, but I didn't really get that involved in it because I didn't really know that much about it then. But coming around this time around, there's a sort of different mindset, different view towards the pink now. I think it's very much more pink orientated these days. That's just my view. That's how I see it. I might be completely wrong.
That's my thought with it. It's the pink, I think, or the PDI license. It's where people can make money, is my view. Nothing against it, but it suits a business model a lot better than having someone do what I done, where I got a car, got dual controls, got a couple of students myself that were having lessons for free, and then took a part 3. I didn't need any training. I had training, but there's no minimum requirement. The requirement's the training to go on a PDI license. So it becomes difficult to manage that within a business model if you've got someone who, like I was, just kind of on my own, do my own thing, and then go and pass a part 3 second time round. So there's the two main ways to qualify. Well, the only 2 ways: you can go on a PDI license or you
not.
You don't. But that was a lot of great advice that I think that's one of the things, the people that I've spoke to, the PDIs that I've kind of had phone calls and Zoom sessions with, the amount of lessons they're having to do to kind of cover cost and survive. And they've just not got the time, like you've said, to reflect. And I expect you're finding the benefits of it. I certainly did, because I had a couple of lessons a week and I could reflect on all of them. We need to learn. We've got a final assessment to get through as a PDI or teaching for free. And reflection is a huge part of that learning. So I love that you're making time. A little nod to Terry again. But yeah, massively important. Make sure you're reflecting and taking that time for you, because I expect you feel more comfortable about the process, and it's about you, not about your students.
Yeah, it's definitely very much about me. I still don't. I've got the same hang-ups and confidence issues that many PDIs have. You know, the looming part 3 and getting it right, and I make mistakes every day. We all do. But I give myself that time to be able to reflect on what I've done and how I can improve. Now, I'm not saying that if I did that every day, it's going to guarantee a pass. It's not. Like with any test, it's what happens on the day. But I feel if I've got myself in a position where I feel comfortable doing it, and the only way I can be comfortable doing it is because I've done the training, got the little bit of experience, but I've also given time to look over, to self-reflect, and to say, this is where I went wrong. That's where I need to do something different next time. That's where I need to improve there. Maybe I should try something different. I should try this rather than that and see how it goes. And, today I tried something different and made a learner cry. And then she went and booked 10 hours. So I can't quite work out how that came about. But the gist of it was, she booked 2 lessons with me. She went down that sensible route of finding out if you got on with your trainer. And after the second lesson, I made her cry. and then she went and booked 10 hours. And it's a bit of a laughing joke. She just got overwhelmed. It wasn't anything I'd done. I mean, we had that conversation. I said, is it something that I've done? Is it something I've said? And she was, no, she just got really overwhelmed. She worked herself up and just got really overwhelmed as soon as something went wrong. But I don't know who I got this from, but I always say to my learners, mistakes don't happen in this car. Nobody can make a mistake. All that we're doing is creating learning opportunities. And when I said that, her face changed, because it's not negative. It's not a negative thing. And, we had a 10-minute calm down session, and, she was very grateful in the end. She went away happy, because I can't really say why. I obviously said the right thing and did the right thing and treated her with respect, and she went away happy. But yeah, it was just strange that I made her cry and then she booked 10 hours.
You do know everything after I tried something new and made a learner cry. Everyone stopped listening at that point. It doesn't matter what we say now.
Well, that's it. Thanks for coming. See you next week.
I knew it was coming. It was great. But I love that not that you made a learner cry, but the skills that you've had to use to develop, and then they've gone away and they've booked in more. And I know you said before we started recording, because we'd discussed that had happened, she'd had a couple of lessons and she was chatting with the parents, and the parents had basically said, we're not booking anymore until you say you're happy. And it took today, or whenever it was, the lesson, that she's then come away and been like, yeah, he's a good instructor. Can we book in 10 more? So it's a rewarding job, isn't it? People do sometimes get overwhelmed, and then when they get through it, it's a great job. It's really rewarding.
I don't think I could have ever seen myself consoling someone like that before I started this job. I was quite. I mean, I wasn't horrible, but I didn't have much of a tolerance level for that kind of emotion. But this job's taught me that learning to drive, even learning to be an instructor, can be an emotional journey. And it's taught me a lot. I can't actually think that I've actually done a specific course or podcast or any kind of CPD that actually involves dealing with emotional students or learners. I don't know. I can't recollect, so I don't really know where that's come from. But it must have come from somewhere. There's some sort of there might have been a segment of a training course I've done that has perhaps mentioned it, and I can't recall. But I couldn't have seen myself dealing with that very well. And it's funny because I have bottles of water in the car and I have tissues, and they came in handy. Brilliant.
So there's another tip. Make them cry, have some tissue and a bottle of water.
Yeah,
job done.
that's it. I go home happy.
Is that your plan for your part 3?
Yeah, get the examiner in the back, make them cry, get a pass, and go home.
But then I don't think we've mentioned it much on this podcast, at least this YouTube channel. Sorry.
No RSS feed here.
Disclaimer that some of the challenges you have in lessons, and you've got to think on your feet. I mean, I've had some lessons that have finished early and I've dropped the student off. It's probably just a tactic so they can get a half price lesson next time, because I'm not going to charge them for time when they've kind of just, it's all got too emotional and they've had to go home. Fortunately, they have all come back, but trying to kind of deal with that is you're right, the training for it, because every situation's different. Um, it takes practice, it takes time, and I expect most people are going to have a situation like that on a lesson with a student at some point where things do get too much. Because for us, driving's well, it's just second nature. If you're becoming a driving instructor, you've probably been doing it for a couple of years. But for someone young that's now in charge of a big vehicle that's going quite fast with a bunch of other vehicles that are going quite fast, it can sometimes get a little bit much. And I guess it's our job to manage the risk, but sometimes we might miss it. I think I've maybe missed a couple of cues and I've had to try and deal with what comes up. And then people are dealing with other things outside the lessons as well, which is something that I found. I've had students getting on lessons and they're not kind of at the stage that they was the previous week. And then after a conversation and you find out that there's other things going on at home or at school or college or whatever else is going on, it's exam season. And it's just trying to find that balance, isn't it? To make sure it's a productive time, but managing the risk and managing their expectations at the same time.
Yeah, I mean that conversation I had with her today was based around expectations, because she had in the conversation she basically said she had her expectations were too high. She's the kind of person that wants to do something once and get it perfectly right, and she wasn't able to do that, and it was came as a bit of a shock to her. Not in an arrogant way. She's not that type of person, but she just felt she could do better than she actually could. And when she found out she couldn't, it got all a bit too much for her. But that, I mean, that actually started from me spotting the body language, because we were driving along and I caught a glimpse of her facial expression and saw that she was perhaps a bit upset. So I pulled over, and then the floodgates opened. But I sat and thought, well, I'm glad I spotted that and got it pulled over before it happened on the move, because that would have been a little bit more risky, I suppose. I mean, we're in control. I could have handled it, and that comes from, I remember training. We're looking at facial expressions. This isn't just about getting somebody in the car and teaching them how to drive. There's so much more to this job than just teaching somebody how to drive. I mean, even the word teaching is a little bit controversial, and some people will know what I mean, and some people won't. But
The
yeah,
ones that are listening, oh no.
there's so many facets to this job, and I've found it, like I said before, equally frustrating and satisfying at the same time, which is odd.
I get it. And I think, I mean, I'm not going to put words into your mouth, so we'll find out in a minute what your frustrations are. But for me, the frustration is when I can't help someone or what we're doing isn't helping them. So I'm trying to find different ways to do things to suit the learner. And we'll eventually find it. And everyone seems to be different. So that's where I struggle with the job, is trying to find something that works for maybe a specific student where all my other tools don't work and I've got to try and find some more. But what is it that you find frustrating with the job?
I mean, there's different areas of frustration. If we're on the subject of learners, you're right. It's that situation where, as hard as you try to find out why somebody can't grasp something or find something difficult to do, we try and delve in to find out if there's reasons why. It might not be that because they can't physically do it. It could be an emotional thing. It could be something that's going on at home and their mind's preoccupied and stuff like that. So we're kind of like mini counselors as well, and psychologists who are trying to find out why somebody's struggling, and that can be quite tiresome with our brain matter. just being able to do that before we've even got to where we actually want to be as a driving instructor. We're having to figure out why they're struggling with a certain aspect, and it could be because they got bad results at a recent test or something, but it's asking the questions and delving into that. And sometimes it's difficult because I don't think that some pupils are actually expecting that kind of response from us. I think sometimes they just expect, look, this is how you do it, get on and do it. If you don't do it, you're not going to pass your test, kind of attitude. And when you come in and you say, are you okay? Is there any reason why you feel about that, or why you can't do this? Are there any reasons? That's, you're trying to delve in to why. And they're like, well, yeah, I suppose I've had an argument with my dad and blah, 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 blah. And then you find out that just getting it off their chest, and you go back to this, try that again, then they do it. And it's like, oh, I've spent 10 minutes trying to teach them to do it. And all it took was a 2-minute conversation, or even a 1-minute conversation, to find out that it's actually related to something outside of the car in their personal life. And once they've got it off their chest, off they go. It's like, oh, that's a frustration. But to me, that's a good frustration. That's frustration turned into satisfaction. But I mean, one of my big frustrations outside of the car is the negativity within the industry. And this actually goes back to the original point I was making about people coming into the industry. Is it's very easy to fall upon the negative side of it, and there are certain people within this industry, and they know exactly who they are, that are good for the industry. They're good for the people in it. They're good for the people who are coming into it. And they're also going to be good for the people that haven't come into it yet, that are going to come into it. And if only we had more of those, if we could can we clone Joshes and clone Terrys? And I'm not going to go down the route of naming them all, because we'll be here all night, but they know who they are. And they're the people that are willing to give up their time and, come on the podcasts, do these sorts of things. And I found that really beneficial. I mean, that is, if I had to list 5 things, they would definitely be up there in that top 5 of my motivations. When I'm having a down day, I know I can go somewhere. It could be YouTube, it could be Apple Podcasts, it could be the PDI group, it could be some of the PDIs that I communicate with in various ways on a almost daily basis, which is good, because this job can be really insular. This job can be quite lonely. And I don't think people realise that coming into it. That, yeah, it's great now. You've got support, you've got, Facebook groups, you've got all this, these people that you can surround yourself with. And some of them, are to a more or less extent available. They've got, you've got your life, I've got my life, other people have got their lives, but they still manage to find time to help other people out, which is great. But it can equally be very lonely and isolating. And I think what I've found has made that much easier. I don't feel alone. I don't, because there's various directions I can go in. I can message Josh, Terry, Diana, Phil, Laura, other PDIs that I'm chatting with and stuff, and I get a response. Now, some responses are, what you want to hear, which is great, because you do need a bit of pep talk. You do need sometimes a little bit of a boost, but sometimes it's a realistic response, and it kind of brings you back down to earth. And it's like, look, stop being an idiot. Stop overthinking it. Do you remember what was said on so and so and so and so? Go back and have a look at that. Go back and listen to that, and then carry on complaining about what you're moaning about. And it works, because I go back and I listen to it and I go, oh, yeah, I remember that now. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And then I'm off whistling happy. It's really good. It's a really good environment that I found myself in. And if I can make what I've found, if I can replicate that in somebody else's life coming into the industry, even just one person, I'll feel satisfied. Because I would like to help people coming into the industry avoid the pitfalls and obstacles and hurdles that I've had to overcome, because it can actually be a really enjoyable experience. But I know for some it's not. And it's the last thing you need if you're going through this training process to get through part 1, part 2, and part 3. That's stressful enough as it is. You don't need the aggro of, oh, my trainer's 100 miles away, or I'm stuck in this contract for 3 years, or I've got a car that's a bag of bolts and they won't fix it, etc., etc. You can go on and on and on. There's loads of things it could be. But if I could help one person avoid those kind of pitfalls, I'll be a happy person.
You've had some great advice tonight that's going to help people avoid that. And certainly coming into the industry, some questions to ask, a different view on it, like when you've said about the terms and conditions. Yes, I'm aware that people should read anything before they sign it, but using that to gain some knowledge prior to becoming a driving instructor and helping it be part of your decision process is massively important. And yeah, if that can help some people make the decision on where they're going to go and train, then great, because you need support to become a driving instructor. I was very fortunate when it was just before my part 3. I found a local PDI who lives down the road, Rick, and we just used to go and watch each other's lessons. His training wasn't that great. Mine was an intensive course, and we just helped each other. Neither of us knew anything, but we got each other through the part 3, and we're quite good friends now. We talk quite a lot. But he's one of very few driving instructors local that I talk to, because in the test centre, I tend to be stood outside in the fresh air vaping. So I don't really get to know anyone. But all the online stuff, I think there's some great groups out there. There's what Terry's up to with his podcast. He's building a great community there. If you can take the good from all of the Facebook groups, there's a lot of good. You just need to ignore the bad. And I think if you're at the process where you've found the groups, you probably are in a position where you can tell the difference between the good and the bad. And surround yourself with good people that are positive thinking, and ignore the ones that are against the system and complain about the job. But there's a lot of help out there for people. It's been great to hear how you're finding it, and I'm looking forward to seeing where you get to with it in the future when you get part 3 done, and go from there. Is there anything else that you'd like to share for PDIs or for people that are thinking of coming into the industry?
I think most of the things I wanted to say I've mentioned in one way, shape or form through this episode. But it is, I mean, if I could give one piece of advice to anyone thinking of coming into the industry, it's do your homework, reach out to people, and then gauge the response you get from people. Because I think that says a lot about the people in the industry. There are people within the industry that are absolutely worth their weight in gold. And it's finding those people. And they're not always the easiest people to find if you're outside of the industry. But once you find them, you'll know who they are, and you won't, you'll want to surround yourself with them, because it's true, isn't it? You surround yourself with positive people, it makes you more positive. And that certainly had an impact on me, because I was a grumpy old man before I came into this job. And now I'm really quite positive. I'm a lot more relaxed. I'm a lot more approachable to people nowadays, even in my personal life. And that's had a really positive effect on me, because, I'd like to be the best person I can be. I'm not sure if I've found that person yet, but we'll see. We'll see what happens in the future.
You will get there. It'd be good to hear from you again and find out how you found the part 3. I know you've got plans over the next few weeks, so we'll see where you get to. But yeah, surround yourself with good people, and there are a lot of good areas you can get to within the industry. There's loads of groups popping up and everything else that's going on. So find that, and yeah, good luck with it. From my point of view, if anyone's ever got any questions, I'm not a trainer, but I'm more than happy for people to reach out and message me, either on here in the comments, on the Facebook group, whatever it is, on Mirror Signal Podcast, Facebook group, Facebook page, whatever. And yeah, thank you so much for your time, Kev. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I think there's some really useful bits of information there for people that are coming in, and potentially people that are about to maybe sign a franchise contract, whatever it is, just to have some questions and some certainty around what they're stepping into, and make the best decision for them rather than what's maybe the best decision for someone else's business model. But that's my opinion. Do what works for you.
Yeah, don't just click the first link on Google and go with it. There is so much, there's so many options out there. There's so many people to reach out and ask questions. You just got to go, and find them. So even if you use this YouTube channel to start your journey, as I'm pretty sure that you're happy to point people in the right direction. And anyone that wants to come into the industry, anyone that wants to, when you've started the process, come join us at Lou's PDI group on Facebook, because it's a really great community and a good place to be for PDIs.
We will leave the info for that in the description. But yeah, get amongst the groups, find the cool people, ignore the moody ones, and remember, it's for you. It's not for anyone else. It's your career, your journey. Do what works best. But Kev, thank you so much for your time. I've appreciated it and got a lot from tonight. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. It's been a pleasure.